foreign policy and security. Before hearing from Sonia, as we normally do here on Global Tremors, I just want to bring you a few big news items that have transpired since our last episode. According to the Twitter account of Slovakian President Hager, Slovakia has approved further military assistance to Ukraine, to include 486 air defense missiles and anti-tank rockets, as well as 100 air defense launchers. There are unconfirmed reports that Valery Gerasimov, Russia's chief of the general staff, who is Russia's highest ranking military officer, has been fired by Putin, which is quite a huge news if you saw our episode yesterday with Admiral Nielsen. BP, British Petroleum, will exit its 19.75% shareholding in Rosneft, a Russian energy company estimated at 14 billion. Swiss President Ignazio Cassis said Sunday that Switzerland will very probably follow EU directions on freezing Russian assets. The EU is banning Russian TV and Sputnik. We have Elon Musk, who's working now with Starlink. And then finally, there are cracks that appear in the Russian society, with Oleg Ansimov at a major UN climate change conference apologizing for his country's invasion of Ukraine, while tennis player Andrei Rublev wrote "No war on TV." So Sophia, thanks for holding put for 1 second. There is so much news going on. We start this morning on day 5 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You're based in Brussels, you're a Ukrainian. What do you make of the situation so far? And also, what is your reaction been to the EU's major shift in foreign and security policy?
Good morning, Roger. If I can say that it's good. I think that I want to start from the fact that I'm just a Ukrainian and civil society citizen, despite my academic and background in the EU and NATO. So maybe the day 5 as a Ukrainian, I mean, it for sure has been insane and very terrifying and quite devastating time for all of us, considering that we, the Ukrainian diaspora, most of our families are still based in Ukraine, and we are trying to support them as much as possible. But all of us feel pretty much helpless considering the whole situation, and one person basically being in decision of how the world is shifting with every minute or every second. But at the same time, I would love to praise Ukrainians and the Ukrainian army, and I think the whole world will join me in this. Everyone is super shocked in the way how Ukrainians are resisting, and how much that there is no region, there is no oblast that has been given to the Russians, and the Ukrainians keep fighting back. And I think that is pretty much, even if you're a military expert, and I have been reading some military analysis before, everyone was saying Ukraine will not be able to resist for that many days. And so far we have been proven that I'm saying we because I feel that we are in a way connected, have been fighting back. And for the first few days, Ukraine has been doing it on its own in a way. And this has been mainly the result of the 8 years of preparation. And Ukraine is surely stronger now than it was in 2014, due to our foreign experts and the foreign aid, but also internally. But I think the last few days, indeed, as you rightly pointed out about the news, has changed a lot, because we all knew that Ukraine would not be able to do this for that long time on its own. And that has been also realized by a lot of foreign allies and partners, including the EU, NATO, and the US, and even more globally. And indeed, I think that even though some people say it's Putin who united the European Union, but I would say that this is the Ukrainians and the people who showed that you can actually resist Putin if you really want to, and you have this sort of power from the inside. So what has been done by Germany, by Sweden, Germany has been sort of neutral towards a very pacifist nation. And now they are not only helping Ukraine militarily, but also changing internally their whole security policy, building the LNG terminals in order to become less Russia dependent. Switzerland is joining the sanctions. Sweden is helping militarily, even though it sort of announced its neutrality for a while. And now I think that Ukraine, the security and foreign policy has been changing. And I think that the consequences will be there for the next months, if not years.
Sophia, thank you so much for giving your perception, and I really appreciate you speaking to us, as you said, as a Ukrainian and not necessarily as a thematic or national expert. I think it rings out. A couple of quick points as we sort of move on a little bit. Petro Poroshenko, the former president of Ukraine, He's an oligarch. He's very well known. He's been doing a lot of interviews on CNN. And it's just remarkable to see somebody like him or Vitaly Klitschko, who also, have the resources to are on the front lines, part of the territorial defense, sort of, it has equalized everybody across the board. And I think a lot of credit has to go to the former government with Petro Poroshenko, who really put in a lot of reforms of professionalizing the army, the training that's happening at Operation Unifier led with Canada in Lviv, which is all really good. Sophia, you mentioned a little bit about the EU security policy and sort of the reverberations about it. This is a fundamental shift, where Joseph Borrell, Ursula von der Leyen, they have really said that, we're going to make some changes on it. I mean, what is your real take on sort of the massiveness about the EU now supplying arms, material support to Ukraine? I mean, is it a little too late? Or, I mean, do you think now this has completely altered the geopolitical calculus and reach of the European Union?
I don't want to comment on the oligarchs and everything. I would just say that at this stage, a lot of Ukrainians are being united, and I have a deep hope that most of them are doing this really very from the bottom of their hearts, and not just for the face to be there. As we have seen during the Maidan, there were a lot of people who were supporting, but then they sort of shifted a little bit. So yeah, but let's not go into there. But when it comes to the EU security and foreign policy, that has been sort of the thing I was researching a lot for the past 2 years and trying to get the in-depth. And I think that what is happening during the last 2 days, to a lot of researchers, it was just impossible. And I worked for the EU institution and for the European Parliament, which is named to be the one which sort of pushes the EU as much as possible usually. And we were often hearing that, no, this is impossible. No, this is impossible. And it's just insane to see that there is actually always a way to maneuver with the whole legal restrictions. And one of them was that the EU currently has the money and finances to finance the military support and the fuel delivery to Ukraine, which is indeed something that has been not known for the whole existence of the EU, from what I'm aware of. If it's going to have the consequences in the future, I think it will on the strategic compass, which is currently being discussed and debated in the EU, but I'm afraid that they would have to revisit basically the whole document and try to change it and remake it, including the positions of the member states. I mean, Germany is one of the crucial member states who has been co-designing the compass, and if they are changing their internal policy, that will change the whole EU policy as well. I do though hope that the EU is going to be more united at this stage, and they have realized as well that only when they act together in this case that it has the consequences, and that's when it actually makes the difference and changes. And that's what a lot of us have been pushing for quite a long time, for the united security and foreign policy. And now it's probably the momentum. So I do hope that it has the long-term consequences and not just the crisis-based ones.
Sophia, thanks so much. And I think, we've spoken a lot about this, but unfortunately for the EU to get this level to really embrace and take, drastic actions when it comes to strategic autonomy, unfortunately, it's really taken a shock to the system, where you had some member states who weren't for tougher measures, without naming anybody specifically. But it's really unbelievable to see some member states who were a bit hesitant about upsetting Russian business interests or other things really say, look, at the end of the day, our priority is democracy, liberty, and freedom. And more importantly, it's our responsibility to support the Ukrainian civil society and government in some of the darkest days. Sophia, I'm also so glad you brought up the strategic compass. I think here on Global Tremors, you're the first person to mention it after a slew of interviews we've done. We've spoken to a lot of NATO experts, or a lot about NATO, and obviously it goes without saying that everybody is in agreement that the new NATO strategic concept, which is going to be released at the end of June at the Madrid summit, is also subject to change. So, I mean, do you think this is going to significantly delay the publication of the strategic compass, or do you think it's going to be a complete rewriting, as you said, based on this new foreign and security policy outlined by Olaf Scholz in the Bundestag yesterday?
I don't want to go into much into depth because obviously I think there is a reason why no one mentioned it so far. It's not been high on the table for now, but I have been following Twitter a lot, and it's just a lot of spamming constantly about who thinks what about what. And I think at some point I saw a strategic concept being mentioned, and there were people who were saying that it's surely going to be revisited. And again, as I was already saying before, I think at this stage, I don't believe that there is anything what is impossible for the EU. I don't know about NATO that much because NATO so far have been not acting despite all the unifications and the member states support. I think it's still more based on the fact that the allies are helping individually Ukraine rather than having the common idea. And I think there is also the reason for that. But when it comes to the EU, it feels like there is nothing impossible. So I'm pretty sure that the compass is going to be fully revisited. I just don't believe that countries are going to make it go through as they used to, which for sure is going to have a huge delay. But but I assume there will be a lot of work for security and foreign policy experts in the next few months.
So, Sofiia, thanks for that. Sofiia, I want to jump now. We've talked about Ukraine, the strategic concept, its implications for the EU, Brussels, and the Berlaymont. I want to talk now to you as a Ukrainian, as a member of, Ukrainians, diaspora and civil society. And specifically, I want to return to the issue and the leadership of President Zelensky. For everybody right now watching on Global Tremors, this morning, The Guardian ran an article with the title, "The phone has become the Ukrainian president's most effective weapon." And Sofiia, before I let you comment on, these unbelievable videos that he's been posting at the end of the night, I just want to read everybody very quickly one snippet of the article of President Zelensky's schedule on Saturday. So take Saturday's diplomacy. Zelensky said he opened another day of the diplomatic frontline with phone calls to Emmanuel Macron, followed by calls to the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, the Italian Prime Minister, the President of Switzerland, the Prime Minister of India, the Turkish President, the Azerbaijani President, the Dutch Prime Minister, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, the Pope, the Czech Prime Minister, and Polish Prime Minister Andrzej Duda. And Sofiia, if that wasn't enough, President Zelensky then ended the night by talking to British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. So Sofiia, he's an actor. He's well known for his show Servant of the People. He even won Ukrainian Dancing Stars in 2006. Are you at all surprised at the leadership that this, man is coming into as a nascent politician?
I think we all are. I'm one of those Ukrainians who, to be very fair, I didn't vote for him, and I didn't really believe that this person has the capacity to lead the nation. And there are a lot of questions to his ideas when it comes to internal policy. But right now, as some people are saying, it feels like he was born for this momentum in Ukraine. And I feel like a lot of leaders all around the world who have been scared to confront Putin and who were scared to say anything, Zelensky proved to them that it's possible. His amazing quote, "I don't need a lift, I need arms and ammunition for Ukraine," has been something that showed the world exactly. I feel like at this stage, Ukraine actually has a voice because it's been a while since we were overlooked and overheard, and a lot of decisions were made on Ukraine without Ukrainian participation in those. And since the Munich Security Conference speech of Zelensky, I think that has been shifted already back then when he actually provided the world with the Ukrainian position, where we stand and what do we want. And I'm super proud, not even with Zelensky, but I think there has been quite a team as well, efforts of the whole diplomatic staff and all the ministers who have been indeed reaching out to Elon Musk, to all the big giants, Kuleba, who has been also the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who have been tweeting a lot and talking to the Prime Minister. And I think that, Ukraine has showed that if you ask, then you get the results. And I think the best in all of this is that we really know what we want. So we provide 1, 2, 3 points, and it's not just the general diplomatic things. So maybe that also helps that Zelensky comes from the people's side, and he's not that much aware of the whole diplomatic protocol of being nice and sweet and all of this, but he can actually be pretty blunt, and considering the circumstances, that's what he's doing, and showing the world what Ukraine wants, what Ukraine is, and being with the people right now. He's also a huge support for Ukrainians, because I feel like if he would have left Ukraine, that would put the spirits of Ukrainians and Ukrainian army pretty much down. So kudos, I couldn't be more proud and
I think, Sofiia, the emotions that you feel, it resonates with everybody who watched those videos, especially with rumors of sort of the Spetsnaz wanting to go for the decapitation strategy. And, not just that quote about "I don't need a ride, I need arms," but sort of the multiple attempts by France and the United States to really suggest you should leave. Sofiia, before we get to the diplomatic talks in Gomel, which we're going to start today, I think one major difference of this war, which President Putin hasn't planned for, is not just the resistance of the Ukrainian people and the army, but it's the unbelievable strategic communications, not just by Zelensky, but also, as you said, by the foreign minister. As you know, the foreign minister had a great press conference yesterday outlining exactly what they want. And as you said, they're not speaking in generalities. It's very to the point. It's very detailed. So Sophia, do you think maybe, as we said, we're day 5 into it, and obviously these videos out of Dnipro of babushkas making Molotov cocktails themselves, but do you think this actually might be the turning point in this conflict has been the strategic communication, of Zelensky, of the foreign ministry, and surrogates like yourself? Because, from my perspective, if you're on Twitter or Facebook, every Ukrainian, regardless of where you're from, is saying, this is what you need to do to help us. And Ukrainians are self-organizing, they're speaking among themselves, and the embassies are getting out and also being very active. So do you think maybe that's something that, the Russian strategy underestimated on how point the strategic communications was going to be of Ukraine?
I would dare to say that even Ukrainians probably have underestimated this, because as I was saying before the Munich Security Conference, there was really no Ukrainian voice out there. And now we realize, I think like step by step, everyone has its own role to play. And in my capacity, for example, I wouldn't say that there is even that big of a coordination. It's not like we go and we think about the message which should be sent there, but it feels like it's already inside of us. We all know what has to be done. And because we have Zelensky and Kuleba who are delivering the main messages, it's just easier to sort of copy paste and then adapt it to the audience, which in my case, what I'm doing, adapting it to the Belgian audience or adapting it to NATO or the EU people in order to make it work better and for them to better understand it. And I think this national idea, which is inside of Ukrainians, that's exactly what Putin did underestimate about ourselves. Because we're just not those type of people who are just going to give in and who will sit there and do nothing. I feel like everyone, it's also the spirit and this whole adrenaline which is inside of you. When you see someone is doing something and they are doing it great, like you just want to help and you just want to be part of the whole thing. So everyone is doing a little bit, and when we see that it works, when we see the response from Elon Musk, when we see the support from the huge celebrities and media people and the international organization, then you see that it actually works and there are results. So you just go and do more and more and more. So yeah, sorry.
No, it's all good. And, for everybody just joining us, we're speaking with Sofiia Shevchuk, originally Ukrainian based in Brussels. Sophia, I want to just pick up on what you said right there. And I think what has happened is that it's contagious, this resistance to push back and fight for Ukraine. Yesterday you had 100,000 people in Berlin come out protesting with Ukrainian flags all over Berlin saying, stop the war. And I think for everybody watching, Sophia, you alluded to it earlier, if Ukraine didn't think that they had a voice or that nobody was listening, I think it is beyond doubt now that everybody, not just in Europe, not just in Moscow, everybody is hearing Ukraine's voice right now. Protests in Belarus, even in Kyrgyzstan, in Bishkek, with protests going on. So, I mean, nobody wants this war. And I think it's increased, this pressure and the decibel level is reaching a crescendo right now that is crushing President Putin internally, as we've seen with some of his military action and his desperation with threatening nuclear saber rattling yesterday. Let's move to something, Sophia, a little bit more optimistic without, getting our expectations too high. As you know, we said earlier, there are diplomatic talks that are set to begin today in Gomel. What do you think the Ukrainian delegation will try to extract out of it? As, in this big press conference that the Ukrainian foreign minister gave, he said, we're going to go there to listen, but we're not going to cave.
Just on the previous thing as well, I think there are still people who don't hear Ukrainian voices. And I think those are unfortunately people in Russia who are still doubting and who are still questioning. I mean, questioning and doubting is already some positive progress, but I'm afraid that the whole disinformation machine in Russia is still not cracked. And there is still going to be a lot of work to be done, despite all the protests and a lot of efforts from Ukrainians. And for that, there is another line of communication, how much I was proud of all the Ukrainians who are actually trying to help Russian soldiers in a way to get them back home or to call their mothers and try to raise this awareness. And especially a lot of women who sort of on this very emotional and feeling level are doing the efforts. but yeah, the machine is still not cracking, and I feel like it's going to take a while. So this is another hope how we see for Ukrainians, because if you ask me what's the outcome, or like what would be the end of the everything what's going on right now, because no one literally knows. And I think one of the hopes for Ukrainians is that the Russian society is going to wake up in a way, and there is going to be some internal differences and internal things done in Russia that could affect the way the whole situation is developing right now. But on your question regarding the, wait, can you remind me your question? Sorry.
No problem, Sofiia. We were just going to talk about the talks in Gomel.
Yes, indeed. So before I joined you, I saw that the talks just started, or the Ukrainian delegation has just arrived at the border. I mean, here I cannot say more than what the president has delivered in one of his speeches, that he has no hopes about these conversations or negotiations, no matter how you call them. But I think the main purpose indeed is to A, listen in, and then the B is to show the Ukrainians that he tried and that he is open. I think from day one, he was saying that he's open to talk to Putin, and he was calling Putin in his famous speech to the Russians that he called, and he tried to, but there was no answer. So I think that's the difference as well with all the previous Ukrainian presidents we used to have, or even with Petro Poroshenko, who was very resistant to talk to Russians, and for obvious reasons, of course. But Zelensky, I think since his day one of the presidency, he has been open to negotiate and to talk, and like, yeah, as you were saying, very blunt with what he wants. And at this stage as well, he's showing this sort of open for communication and for diplomacy. And yeah, even the whole thing, how Ukraine is trying to do it in a very diplomatic and in very westernized, or yeah, whatever you call it, like civilized word, civilized way type, in a way that there has been a case delivered to the Hague on Vladimir Putin, and yeah, everything the way Ukraine tries to sort the situation. We're literally using all possible channels, and including the military ones, which we have to conduct in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Sofiia, well, I think it's fair to say, you're not at the table right now in Gomel, so it's a little bit hard to predict what it's going to happen. It's encouraging, I think, from everybody's perspective, nonetheless, that they are sitting down for talks without preconditions, as some of the earlier attempts was the deadline at 3 p.m. in Minsk. And that, some of these hard issues about, Ukraine having to demilitarize and absolutely sign up to some sort of neutrality pact of not joining maybe NATO or the EU. So again, thank you for your honesty and not sort of complicating the matter. So if we're coming into the last part of the interview right now, but if I can just return to one issue right now. Again, we've done a slew of interviews since since the invasion started, and it's been a gradual water drip process of people speaking out in Russia, against the war. As I mentioned very earlier, you've had a couple of oligarchs who have come out, notably Deripaska, who have said they were against the war without mentioning Putin. Alexander Ovechkin, this tennis player. You've had some defects now in the diplomatic circles, and even you've had people from RT who have started to resign, and there's low morale. But Sofiia, just maybe you can help us understand. Obviously, protesting in Russia, whether it's in St. Petersburg, Moscow, or anyone else, is very, very difficult. Now with Monday, there's going to be a bank run. The economic sanctions are really going to start to bite right now. From your perspective, what type of civic movement do you need to see in Russia or in a specific city that might change your current position that Putin is not feeling the pressure enough at home?
I mean, this is a very difficult question because, again, I'm not a Russia expert, and my first answer would be very emotional, very much Ukraine-based, where in Ukraine there is literally nothing impossible for us, which we proved in 2013 and 2014 when people were actually dying for the freedom. And when someone tells me, I'm sorry, but we are being captured by the police, I mean, just show them what happened in Ukraine in 2013. And then, when they basically raised, the whole society went on the streets. Like there was literally probably very, very few percentage of those who still remained silent. So my first probably reaction would be, if all Russians or even half of Russia is going to go on the streets, there is just no way how they can kill everyone and how they can capture everyone. So it's just it's the choice. I'm not a Russian person to make the choice instead of them. But if majority of them goes and buys and they stand for each other, then I see that there might be something that is shifting. But another part would be also the Russian elites. Here again, I'm not a Russia expert, and you really need to go into the whole depths of trying to understand how Russian society works, what type of history they were taught at schools, and the whole elite as well. Like they are, the way they are thinking is just completely different from what we are used to and from what we have been taught. But my hope indeed is as well that there will be some elite shifts that would make Putin resign in a way, or like somehow, I mean, he's in bunker, so I guess you can't really kill him anymore at this stage. And he proved that people around him are very much those who are, very, very dedicated to him and what he's doing. But there might be potentially some shifts internally in Russia who would, in a way, change the government and make it stop in a way. But also, and the third one would be the military and the army. I saw that Ukrainians this morning have delivered the message, with which I'm also has been very much surprised. So now they're offering money for those soldiers who are going to give up and not going to go to Ukraine, and that they are going to, basically give up doing the military actions with the whole military equipment. And for that, the IT society and the Interior Ministry of Ukraine are going to give money to all those soldiers who are not going to go on Ukrainian war. So that's the development at this stage. And I think that, the huge part of Ukraine is really hoping for some internal changes in Russia that are going, that would have to take place ASAP for the things to change and to finish.
Well, Sofiia, thank you so much for joining us. And for everybody who has just joined on or wasn't able to hear the great interview we just did with Sofiia, basically just to sum it up, I think everybody in Ukraine is just unbelievably overwhelmed and satisfied with the leadership, not just of the government, but of the average Ukrainian, putting together in support. Sofiia still believes that more needs to be done to raise the pressure on President Putin domestically in Russia, and that nothing should be ruled off the table. It's still a bit early to see what the takes are from Gomel, but as you said, Sofiia, there's no point to sort of spread any disinformation. And, Sofiia has come onto the air today and broken a little bit of news for everybody that the Ukrainian Interior Ministry is going to adopt a quote unquote defection policy that was very common between South Korea and North Korea, about offering potential amnesty and financial compensation for throwing down their arms and coming to Ukraine. So again, everybody, that's an unverified claim that Sofiia has just said. We'll have to confirm it when we get out. But Sofiia, as we sign off, do you have any last comments for our viewers out there on Global Tremors?
Well, I would say thank you for all those who support Ukraine. And I would, considering that we are probably watched by ordinary people, like there is a lot you can still do, from humanitarian aid and financially supporting Ukrainian army to pressuring the governments to do more, because there is always something to do more. I would just call for the action to support Ukraine as much as you can, and like every euro counts. But also to be super grateful to everyone who tries to support, who writes the messages, who goes to the protest and pitches in as much as they can. So thank you for your support and for doing this as well.
Sofiia, I speak for everybody at GlobeSec. It's really shaken everybody at the organization, and we're still, we're doing our best and we can do more. So thank you for coming on and for sharing your opinion. Everybody on Global Tremors, we're going to be back at 5 o'clock CET talking cyber with Lauren Zabarek, the executive director of the cyber project at Harvard Kennedy School of Belfer Center. So for everybody out there, thank you for watching. We'll see you again. Slava Ukraina. And thanks again, Sofiia. We'll see you.